Welcome to episode 118 of Project Geekology. And now that you're tuning in, we were actually just in the middle of planning our heist. We're trying to steal a whole bunch of credits from the Imperials. So, listen in as our plans unfold on this heist.
You're not supposed to tell these people what we're doing in advance of our heist.
I am one of your hosts, Anthony, and this week we are covering the first 6 episodes of Season 1 of Andor. Joining me, as always, is...
Dakota, and yeah, we were at least planning on stealing, a whole quarter's worth of Imperial payroll for the sector, but that's out the window. You might as well tell them it was on Aldani and right on that Alkenzi airstrip. That's what we were going to do. We're going to go to the next sector, though. We're going to figure something out. Yes, my name is Dakota. We're doing Andor. I'm really excited. Specifically the first 6 episodes of Andor Season 1. Next week, we're going to do the final 6 episodes of the first season of Andor. And yeah, we are also joined with...
Rich. And I just gotta say, you guys gotta keep screwing it up. Your Uncle Harlow would be so disappointed in you, Anthony. He keeps giving you these opportunities and then you throw them all away. Yes, you are joined this week by your favorite character, Cyril's mom. It's a pleasure to be here, I'm sure.
That was pretty good. I wasn't sure which character that was at first because... A lot of accent going on there. In my head, you were that.
I thought you were impersonating your uncle or something.
I thought he was impersonating that secretary from Monsters Inc.
Oh yes, yes.
Like a guy version.
It's kind of like an amalgam of really my mother-in-law and that lady from Monsters Inc. and the mother from Andor.
The Cyril's mom has a much scratchier voice. There is accent there. I think it's more British than anything, but it's like I can't even do it.
It's so terrible. We're gonna hear a lot about that lady, but I don't like her. Not a fan.
Great actress though. Good in a pinch if you got Dementors around.
Agreed.
That's right.
All right, alrighty. So let's kind of start this off. Rich, what have you been up to?
Oh, let's see. I've been playing MLB as always, attending way too many Met games. I'm actually thinking about getting the Oblivion remaster. I remember I bought Oblivion and traded it in and bought it again and then traded it in and bought it a third time because I remember being so overwhelmed by the game. I started playing the first time and my friend came over and he's like, how are you dealing with the gates? And I was like, what are the gates? And then when the gates started, I was like, oh no! So I'm a little hesitant just because the price point, I don't know if I want to pay $50 for a remaster of a game from 2007, but a student threw down a gauntlet this week and he wants to know if he's able to beat Oblivion Remaster before the end of the school year, if that can count as his portfolio for the class. And I said yes, because I don't think he's going to be able to do it. I just don't. I mean, they made the leveling easier, but I just don't think he's going to be able to do it. So and by the way, just as a side note, I never give hundreds. I teach honors level classes, and I kind of say, you can't be perfect, so you can't get 100. So I'm breaking my own rule just to see if this child can beat Oblivion Remastered.
How would you even know if he did?
Oh, he's loyal. He's sending me screenshots. Apparently, he named the character Dick Laconi as an homage to me while insulting me. And then he asked me my son's name, and then 10 minutes later said, hey, my horse's name is Charlie. So there's that. So he's sending me constant updates. I found him to be an honest young man when talking about Pokemon trading card game Pocket. So I'm kind of honestly, this might be the most exciting thing that happens for the next month and a half, because I don't think he's going to be able to do it. It's a hard game.
You wouldn't want to give me the opportunity because I would literally do it. I would play dude, you know me, I'm a gamer. Dude, I'd be like, yep, I'm hopping on that.
Well, I told him he's got to do a presentation.
For this? Okay, yeah, bet I'm doing this.
he even has to do a year-end presentation, and I told him that like this has to be the presentation, like his journey to try to get to this. So I'm honestly really excited for what's going to happen. I have no idea how this is going to turn out, but this might be a really fun end of year presentation to be able to watch. So I obviously can't share it with you guys or anything like that, but that's what I've been up to. But what have you been up to, Anthony?
Oh, hold on. I want to mention something that you mentioned just prior to the start of the recording. You mentioned that you had gotten students into Star Wars and that you felt extremely proud as a teacher because that's a huge life accomplishment. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so like forget getting college credit, forget being prepared to write good essays when you're in college. I, as part of my Macbeth unit, include Revenge of the Sith, which is amazing. I kind of like went on a lark, but I wanted them to see the hero's kind of journey and the fall of a hero. And I thought that I would start off with Revenge of the Sith and see if it worked, and it worked. So I've been teaching it for now, I think this is my second year doing it. And a couple of my students were supposed to be doing test prep the other day, and I walked by and I said, "Are you watching Kenobi?" And she was like, "Yes, I am watching Kenobi." And I was like, "Why are you doing that?" They're like, "Well, it's your fault. You got us into Star Wars, so we just started watching everything." And they then talked about how they were going to go see Revenge of the Sith in theaters that night. And I was like, "But you guys just watched it in class, like for 4 days with me." And they're like, "Yeah, but we get to see it in theaters now." So I think the greatest accomplishment I probably will have is that as a teacher is definitely the fact that I got kids into Star Wars. Like, forget about anything else. Like, I taught a kid who got into Yale last year. Like, that, great, awesome. That was cool. And congratulations. But more important than Yale, I think, is Star Wars universe.
That is more important, I would say. And I was telling you that that's particularly cool, not just because, they're watching not only the films, but they're diving into the shows. And what's great about Star Wars is that there's always new Star Wars content. May not be, always on the screen. A lot of it's like, comics and novels and stuff. But Lucasfilm has no plans of, stopping their visual Star Wars content. We just got a bunch of news on new stuff. There's going to be a Maul animated series. There's going to be, we know that there's a Dawn of the Jedi movie that's coming out that takes place 25,000 years in the past. There's going to be a Rey sequel. There's going to be a couple movies coming out, as well as, new seasons of, live action shows. We have Andor coming out currently. We have Ahsoka.
Isn't there like a Ventress thing dropping too?
There is the Tales of the Underground, I think it's what it's called. It's going to be
the Underworld
Ventress.
Or something.
Tales of the Underworld. Yeah. It's going to be half Ventress, half Cad Bane. Kind of like the Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Sith stuff that came out. Or no, Tales of the Jedi, Tales of the Empire that came out the past 2 years. So that's really exciting. Love those little mini-series that they come out with.
Yeah, those are really cool.
And yeah, there's a lot of Star Wars content. So like seeing that your students, or students plural, are getting into the wider world of Star Wars just because they happened to be in a classroom where they had to watch Revenge of the Sith for a Macbeth segment. I think that's pretty cool because you've given them a fandom that they can tap into whenever they want for the rest of their life because it's always going to be around.
Yeah, so that's the crazy thing about it, is just going from being the weirdo who read all the Legends material and, was going to Barnes and Nobles and waiting for the new Timothy Zahn books to come out, to now it being so mainstream that, you hear about it in class. The next thing you know, you're just kind of binging it on Disney. It's pretty cool. I don't know. I never thought that I could rob taxpayer money and indoctrinate children into Star Wars fandom, but here we are, ladies and gentlemen. I'm living the American dream.
Guys, not only are we planning to, stage a heist against the Empire, we're also robbing taxpayers of their money. It's a good time. It's a good time out here. Anthony, let's jump over to you. What have you been up to?
I have also been doing some Star Wars related stuff, and that's not just, obviously I've been watching Andor in preparation of this episode, but I saw Revenge of the Sith. They brought it back to theaters for its 20th anniversary, and yeah, man, I saw it yesterday in 4DX, and dude, That experience was crazy. I've never seen
Yeah?
a movie in 4DX. I've done 4DX stuff in like theme parks, but I've never seen like a full like, 2+ hour movie in 4DX. And dude, it was a wild ride, man. It was a wild ride.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think I only have like 2 days left to watch Revenge of the Sith in theaters, so I'm going to try over the next 2 days to make it to that, because I do actually want to do a 4DX showing. But yeah, we'll see.
Dude, if you do,
if
you do go to a 4DX showing, like, so they use some of the effects for like the trailers. They showed a live action trailer for How to Train Your Dragon, and they showed like some of the effects during that, and then they did some of the effects during the Thunderbolt. So I'm assuming that there's going to be 4DX for both. But dude, like, I knew the seats were going to like move and stuff, but I didn't think that they were going to like try to throw me out of the seats, dude. Like, I was going to get whiplash watching that movie. Like, it was crazy. Like, that intro sequence where, they're fighting the space battle over Coruscant was like, I'm getting rocked around, like, seriously, like, boom, like, dude, I'm like, what is going on? This is crazy. I didn't realize it was going to be that insane.
That's cool.
But it was fun, though. There was like mist, there's air, like getting like kind of blown. Like, if there was kind of like blast or fire going on, they would like, there would be like a gust of air like blowing past your ear, or like kind of like towards you from in front of you. Parts that had water, like, when they were fighting on Kashyyyk, there was like moments with water, like explosions in the water would like prompt like water getting like shot out at you. During the part where like there was like rain, when Anakin is getting brought to like the medical center, there was a little bit of water like coming down from that. Like, it's not like they were like raining you like crazy with water. It's more of like little like spritzes here and there. So I thought it was interesting, and stuff that had steam. You could hear like the steam, and like they would like kind of shoot out. There would be like a little bit of like kind of a mist like being like kind of blown out and stuff. It was cool, man. It was definitely. I've seen Revenge of the Sith in like just many ways. I've seen it in theaters. I've seen it, on a like home projector, TV, on my phone, whatever. But I've never experienced it as like a ride, and that was crazy, dude.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, man. I definitely recommend it, but dude, just be prepared, man. Like, you might feel a little beat up the next day.
Yeah. Is it possible to get like really nauseous on those seats? I imagine, especially in that first intro. It's gotta be crazy.
I feel like some people may get nauseous, but I felt fine as far as that. It was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm like, dude, I left that and I was like, man, I feel a little sore. I woke up this morning, definitely like I felt a little sore, but also it didn't help with the fact that like I went to the gym prior to that, so.
Oh yeah, it's not gonna help.
So I'm like sore from the gym. I'm sore from getting like beat up by the seat in the movie theater. It was, it was fun though, man. I definitely recommend like checking it out.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to jump on that.
Yeah,
okay,
man. What have you been up to? I haven't had any like big things happening.
I finished watching Severance. Crazy show.
Nice.
Like, absolutely just top tier. Everything on Apple TV that I've seen is in that league of HBO quality shows. Right now, I would say like HBO Prime and certain Netflix shows, but Netflix isn't really on that level, and Apple TV are kind of like in a league of their own, where like HBO, Apple TV, and Amazon Prime kind of have that pinnacle of, just prestige storytelling on a small screen, and it's so good. Severance is fantastic. Highly recommend it. Just a really novel sci-fi concept. Just the idea that, in this universe, it's a very similar universe to our own, but there is a company that has developed the ability to sever one's mind when you enter the workplace. So basically, you are now essentially a new person when you enter the workspace. Like, that part of your mind has no memory of your life outside of work, and your life outside of work has no memory of what you did inside work. So essentially, you kind of diverge into a separate being. And it comes with all the philosophical stuff that you would, assume or think would arise in a world where that is a thing. Like the idea of, would that individual part of you that they call it an innie, it's your inner self that you don't know, does that get a separate soul? It starts getting almost like religious in some aspects. It's just a really fascinating concept. They really explore it really well, and I'm excited for season 2. Did I ever tell you guys, I might be partially responsible for why Severance season 2 was, so late?
What do you mean?
What are you talking about?
So Severance season 2 is it was notoriously pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And I literally might be, part and parcel as to why it got pushed back. I don't think I've ever said it online, but it's kind of a funny story. So I do electrical work, and I was working for a company that happened to have the contract for the Lionsgate movie studios that they were building in Yonkers.
Oh, I remember that. That was wasn't that a little while ago? That was a while back.
This was a while back. Yeah, it was about a year ago. I was working out there. A little more than a year ago, actually. It was probably a year and a half ago that I was working at those studios. And I was responsible for all of the fire alarm in the buildings. And that's a big job. Studios are massive. You're going to need a lot of fire equipment. You don't necessarily need smoke detectors in the place where they film because they use pyrotechnics in there and everything, so that would go off pretty often. But, throughout the entire building, office spaces and everything, I was the one who did all the fire alarm solely. And I kept asking my company, please give me more guys. I'm on the gun here. They need a temporary certificate of occupancy, a TCO. They want to get people filming in here. I need help. I'm only one dude. I don't have the means to finish this on time. So thankfully, I wasn't the only contractor or person that was late in the job. But my company, they just didn't... I guess the subcontractor that was working with Lionsgate wasn't paying my company regularly. So my company didn't want to put more men on the job site to help me out, even though that would have boosted their morale, because they were every day are you getting more people in today? I'm like, sorry dude, I have no idea. But anyway, I found out early on, before it was a push to get it all finished at a certain time, before they were really on my neck, they mentioned that they were going to film Severance season 2 there, and they were just waiting for the temporary certificate of occupancy. That obviously fell through because I don't know if they filmed after that point. I don't think so, but because I think they went somewhere else in the end. But they were waiting for months to get into this location, and I, along with a couple other contractors, was partially responsible for why Severance season 2 took so long, and I feel really bad about that because it's such a good show, man.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Are you in the travel industry and want to stay ahead of the competition? Then add Travel Trends with Dan Christian to your podcast playlist. Dan Christian is a highly respected travel industry executive and entrepreneur. He covers the latest trends, insights, and innovations that are shaping the future of travel. Travel Trends with Dan Christian is a must-listen-to essential resource for anyone in the travel industry. Available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and TravelTrendsPodcast.com. Transform your travel business with Travel Trends with Dan Christian. Tune in right now.
Dang, Dakota. Well, I mean, it really, maybe
it's not my fault.
Yeah, your company, but I can imagine that a lot of that is really complicated, that whole process. So yeah, that's crazy though.
Yeah, honestly, it was a fun time in my life. I look back at that fondly, not necessarily pushing Severance behind schedule, but that whole job that I was doing, working on movie studios.
Right.
For
Yeah.
That was a sick project. That was a couple years of my life.
I can imagine, dude, awesome. If you ever see a movie that's coming out of that studio, you'd be like, yo, I worked on that studio.
I know. Yeah. It was awesome.
That's cool, man.
I really liked it. I don't really remember what I was talking about that got me to... I finished Severance. That's what I was trying to say. I'm behind on Andor. I have not watched the 3 new eps that came out yesterday as of recording this, but I am caught up on the first 6 episodes of the first season, so we are good to talk about that whenever we are ready to do so. And I'm trying to think if I have anything else I wanted to say. I don't think I do. I feel like I do actually have something else to say. It'll come to me. Anyway, shall we talk about Andor, guys?
We shall.
Oh, yeah, okay, I did want to talk about something. Sorry.
Too late, Dakota.
Speaking about Andor, the first 3 episodes of the second season that came out last week, there was a little tease in the timeline that, there was an object that existed 25,000 years ago that was stolen by Rakatan invaders. I created like a timeline theory video that you can check out on YouTube by going to the show notes down below. And it should be the first video that pops up under Geek Critique. I'm pretty sure that whatever they were trying to suggest will link somehow to the Dawn of the Jedi movie. That also takes place 25,000 years ago. So I'm excited to talk about that. But let's jump into
Sweet.
Andor.
Dude, I kind of want to just say that this show has no right to be as good as it is. Because this is literally like nobody asked for this. Nobody asked for Andor. I mean, I thought Andor was a really cool character. And to be honest with you, out of all of the Disney era Star Wars movies, Rogue One is actually my favorite one. I think Rogue One is like just, I guess the raw just feeling of it and like just the grittiness of it. And they translated that to the smaller screen with Andor. And dude, they killed it. Obviously we've all seen the first season from beginning to end for a while now, but we're only going to be talking about the first 6 episodes. But dude, it's just it baffles me. I'm amazed on how amazing this show is. Like, I feel like a lot can be learned from this show with other Star Wars media. Like, they need to take whatever formula is happening. Obviously, they're not going to get the same feel. It's not going to be the same grittiness because that works for Rogue One and Andor. But like, dude, they're doing something, man, and it's awesome.
Yeah, I don't really know what the secret sauce is, but they are cooking over there.
I think that
film. Go ahead.
I think that the big thing is that how it's gotta kind of end, right?
Sure.
Like Rogue One, the way like Rogue One like bled into it. And I think that it had the perfect level of nostalgia, but not nostalgia, in that like it ended, and you get kind of like it bleeds into New Hope. And I think that it's weird, but I think that operating in certain parameters, like Disney being kind of boxed in by the timeline, is actually helping this series to be excellent.
That's a really strong point, actually, and I had not considered that being pushed into a corner would be good for the creative juices, but especially using that concept and giving us like tertiary side characters to follow. Outside of the Star Wars, like the main Skywalker saga, these are characters that, Mothma, meets Luke eventually and all that.
That's what I think Legends did so well, right? Is that every time a Legends book came out and was approved by Lucas, it created more structures that everybody had to navigate around. And I know that actually can sometimes suffocate storytelling, but I think with Star Wars, in some weird way, the more the writer has an idea of what their boundaries are, the stronger it is. Like Kenobi, I like Kenobi because I wanted to like Kenobi. But truthfully, they had a lot more free reign and chose to go in a way that was not as satisfying to a lot of Star Wars fans.
Okay. Yeah.
I was just happy to see Ewan McGregor as the character again. Like,
I mean,
aside from, some of the grievances of that, I still think that he slid into that character still pretty well, and not all of it was bad. But yeah, no, I get what you're talking about. Andor is, I guess, boxed in because you do know that pretty much after the second season, it's obviously going to roll into Rogue One. So, it would have to be like, okay, yeah, well, there goes Rogue One, and then, yeah, that's that for Cassian Andor. But yeah, man, this first season, getting to know Cassian, and it starts him off in the same way that we're introduced to him in Rogue One. Like this man.
Actually, yeah, that's funny.
Like he though I will say that those guards were asking for it. He was on his way. They were messing with him. And it was funny because the supervisor of that facility, he called it out. He said they obviously ran up on somebody that was the wrong person to mess with, and they got killed for it. And I was like, dude, he nailed it. They messed with the wrong guy. He was just trying to go about his way.
Yeah. Before I forget, Rich, last week you broke my heart with that Babe Ruth thing that you mentioned, that insight about the called shot. I have to break your heart a little bit based on something that you just said.
Oh, no.
So Lucas did not approve those novels.
What?
No, he did not. Most of them, anyway. He did not. There was a couple like Splinter of the Eye. He did, but most of the novels Lucasfilm approved, and Lucas just owned Lucasfilm. He didn't really read through any of it. There were certain things that he took from Legends and brought into canon, but like the name Coruscant, that's a Legends thing that he carried over. But the majority of the stories and everything he did not consider canonical.
I mean, honestly, dude, there was so much of it.
I read every
that he
page.
Didn't have that much control over it. I mean, on top of all the books that came out, there were a lot of video games that came out too.
Shadow of the Empire, was it? The game was. I'm trying to remember, or was that a book?
No, I think that was a book.
There was the one with Dash Rendar.
I know we had was it Dark Forces? That was a game.
There was the Masters of Terrakai, and of course the best game of all time, non-negotiable, is Knights of the Old Republic.
Oh yeah, Knights of the Republic is one of my top favorites of that time. They were absolutely awesome. And then Battlefront. That was
the Battlefronts were so
fun.
The Battlefront threw me off for one reason, and it's the dumbest reason ever. And Dakota and I briefly touched on this, but in Battlefront 2, I believe the actress who's in the game is the actress who is the Shiva from The League, which is the show about fantasy football, where they basically made their high school crush their fantasy football trophy.
Oh, you're talking about the new ones. We're talking about the old ones. But yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're talking.
There was a series of Battlefront games for the PS2 era.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, PS2,
there was
Xbox.
You're talking about Inversio.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. Yes, there was a brief period of time where I had a non-functioning game system, so I think that's where we're talking about.
Which actually, that's a good point to swing us back around to Andor. That story in Battlefront 2 is a perfect example of it shows. And Andor shows us a lot too, is that there's a lot of people. It seems like there's a good bit of people in the Empire that are just not on board with what's going on, and you get that with this with an Imperial officer and a former stormtrooper. They've become rebels. With one kind of being inside, and it's interesting to see the rebellion at this state, dude. It's budding at this point. It's tiny. You can even call it a rebellion. It's it's small acts of terrorism, basically. Dude, seriously. I mean, at that point it is, but it's really interesting that they finally given us this ground floor view of the rebellion. But when we catch the rebellion in the original series, the rebellion has existed already. And they've already been actively fighting against the Empire, but we didn't get to when did this start? How did they get to where they were? And It's people on the inside of the obviously the Empire, and people in the Senate, man. People backing it, in the Senate that are backing this. And
tariffs, man. Tariffs. Lucas knew, man. It's all about the tariffs, bro.
And dude, like
watching Phantom Menace nowadays it's so funny. Like it's so topical. I didn't think that would ever happen in my lifetime, but extremely topical. Yeah, what you're saying, Anthony, about like how the rebellion took shape, we see it fully functioning in the original trilogy.
Yeah.
But at this stage, it's not fully functioning. It's barely functioning, and it's splinter groups that have yet to form a united front, basically. And there's talk about a united front, there's dreams about a united front, but not everybody like thinks that rebellion should be run that way. And we haven't met that character yet, but Saw Gerrera, as we know from at least Rogue One, sometimes some of you know from like Clone Wars, he does not see rebellion as fully altruistic. He has dedicated his life to a very extreme death to all Imperials type of rebellion. So he's on the extreme end. But what we're seeing in this show with Andor is, I wouldn't say it's like small acts of rebellion, because we're starting to see some real organized crime when it comes to bringing down the Empire.
Yeah.
Especially in that second arc that we have on Aldani. We meet this guy named Luthen, who's like such a fascinating character. I don't understand him. I almost don't even want to understand him. He's an enigma. He's such a mysterious person. This guy who collects rare artifacts, has a rare artifact store for the very wealthy of Coruscant. He has a huge network of accomplices and clients in his shop. Like you have like a Gungan shield, you have several like pieces of Amidala's like headgear on the shelves, you have Plo Koon's mask, but that's just a facade. His whole shop is a facade,
right?
So
it's
that
a front.
He can operate in the background.
Yeah.
He's a genius.
He is, man, dude. Stellan Skarsgård, he plays that role so well.
I love him.
And we get Diego Luna back in Cassian Andor. He it had been a while, because I think 2022 was when we got the first season of Andor, and it was 6 years since Rogue One?
2016.
Yeah.
It was when Rogue One came
right
out, yeah.
So I would say they probably started working on it like towards the tail end of maybe 2020, to give or take. So, or I mean, they've been working on it for a while, but maybe like actual filming and production was after that point. But dude, I mean, he slides right back into that character so well. He sells it that he's this guy that, he is kind of like looking out for himself, but he does want to do more, but he definitely keeps his cards close to his chest. And you see that a lot in these first 6 episodes.
Andor as a show just kind of goes to show that you can take any character from Star Wars and write a book about them. They, each character in this galaxy has enough to say to make it worth watching or reading or experiencing. Andor is one of those characters. And honestly, had you asked me in 2016, who would you make a movie about after watching Rogue One? I'd have to really think about it. And I don't think Andor would have been in my top 3 picks.
Right. Maybe Saw Gerrera would have been one.
Much better.
Jyn Erso, Krennic, Galen Erso. I want to know more about.
I would want to know more about Chirrut Emwe.
Yeah, dude,
Chirrut and
Chirrut and Baze Malbus
Wills and stuff. Yeah, no, for sure.
I would not have thought that Andor would be that guy.
Dude,
Andor to me was like, I'm not sure if you guys have seen South Park the movie.
A long time ago, but yes.
He's like, so in South Park the movie, there was a character who's helping them in their own rebellion, and he was kind of French-esque, like he was some foreign, or he wasn't American, and he smoked cigarettes even though he was only like 9 years old, and he was he's like, "Did you guys bring the butt for?" And they're like, "What's the butt for?" He goes, "For pooping, silly." Like, that was the one time he was like relaxed, and like that to me was Cassian Andor so much, you know. So I did not expect for them to explore this character, and it's made all the difference, I think.
Right. Like he was like a main-ish character in Rogue One. Like, he was like a main character, but the story obviously centered around Jyn Erso. Jyn Erso, her father, and then, you know, the whole story of how they got the plans of the Death Star. But like, you know, Andor, you know, his character was cool. I didn't hate his character in Rogue One at all. I thought he was awesome. But yeah, like, dude, like, he wasn't the one that you would be like, oh yeah, like you said, like, he wouldn't have been a top 3 pick.
But somehow they wrote a whole show about him.
They wrote a whole show.
They named the show after this guy.
And they're killing it. Like, how, Dakota? How, like, this blows my mind. Like, how is this show existing, and how is it like this good based off of a character that maybe a very small amount of people asked for?
What I like is the realism in Andor, because you have plenty of Star Wars that's escapism.
Yes.
You have plenty of Star Wars that you can go and just escape reality from, but you have to understand
all of the mainline story,
much,
dude.
Pretty much, yeah. Save for maybe Rogue One. But you have moments in Star Wars that you can't really, you know, escape from, or like there's certain stories that are more grounded, and this is one of those stories. There's no Jedi here. I don't even think they've mentioned Jedi in the show.
Right, yeah.
If I can remember now. Yeah, I don't think so.
I just did his first 6 episodes now, for sure.
As of this first, they have not mentioned Jedi or anything like Force related. And the Force has always been the main thing when it comes to Star Wars. Like, there's always a major spiritual element.
That was like one of the selling points of Star Wars was like these mystical like samurais that wield laser swords, man.
Yeah, they don't got laser swords in this one.
No. There's the stakes are higher, man. The stakes are higher. Like, you know, when you see a Star Wars movie or even a Star Wars TV show with a Jedi in it, like, you know that they're gonna like mow down these Imperials, man. They're gonna destroy them, man. But like, these are people that they don't have these powers. They don't have control over the Force, man. They have to like be very methodical in the things that they do, and they have to plan. And obviously, you know, this heist that happens in that second arc is something that has been planned for a long period of time. And, you know, Andor kind of just comes in and crashes that in a way because of Luthen.
Yeah, it's crazy. Should we talk about the individual arcs? Yeah, we haven't really scratched the surface of the first one.
Right.
But yeah, so the first arc follows Andor specifically after he has that encounter with the Pre-Mor guards on Orlana 1. And he accidentally kills one. He decides to save his own neck. He has to kill both of them.
Yeah.
He accidentally gave away a huge bit of information about himself to, you know, some girl at the strip club, basically. And
yeah.
I mean, that happens to all of us, right?
Of course. Yeah, no, I mean, the amount of times I've, you know, given out my social security number and everything, it's embarrassing at this point. Yeah.
Dakota, you know, like, I never got
that free cruise.
He's out there giving out his full address, you know.
Yeah. But he gives out his, you know, like part of his origin, which is the planet that he comes from, and Canary is what it was, and that's how the Pre-Mor. Is it Pre-Mor? I keep feeling like I'm saying that wrong.
Did his sister actually work there, or did he assume that she did because that's what a woman would do in trying to find a position?
Well, okay, so I don't know that she definitely did or definitely didn't, but he was under the impression that Like he was given some intel.
Right.
That
All
we
right, so
don't know.
intel. Okay, all right. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't
was-
sure if it was like a type of thing where like, all right, I'm going to show up where I think she is, and because of the plight of women, she had to take this role. You know, like I was that's the only thing that I was unsure about.
No. He stepped in there with it was a purpose. Like he had a he
had heard
stepped in with a
something,
purpose.
clearly.
Like
Yeah.
he went there purposefully, not maybe she may be in here. Like, it wasn't like a check. Like it was more of like, he came in, like Dakota said, with a piece of information, and he's trying to clarify whether or not that piece of information was true. And that piece of information is that he was looking for a woman that is from Kenari, and that's where he's from. And that's actually part of that arc too, is showing where Cassian is from. He grew up in like this tribal community.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't care too much about the flashbacks. I never care about flashbacks. Actually, I almost always find myself really bored when flashbacks come on for just about anything. You can have a whole show based on flashbacks. Like, I remember when Arrow was coming out, or Lost. I don't care about what happened at home.
Or Naruto.
I want to know what's happening right now in the story, and they kept cutting back to that. And I didn't think there was a lot to say, personally, about, Andor's life on Kenari. I think it's an interesting bit of lore. One or two flashbacks may have been, sufficient for me, but yeah, I felt that was probably the weakest part of this first 3 episodes, was just the flashback episodes. But I did really like how they tied it in to, his upbringing, that's how they found like a lead basically as to how they were going to track him. And that's also how we are introduced to Cyril Karn, who is what's the name of the company? Anthony, you mentioned it earlier. Prelor?
Primor?
Primor. Yeah, so I don't even understand. I don't know what his, actual job title is, but he took it to the extreme. He made a huge error in like bringing a whole bunch of guys to try to look for Andor. And I think it was something like 6 or 7 of the guys ended up dying on his mission to, capture the guy who accidentally killed one guy and then purposely killed another guy. But anyway, a lot more people died because of your mission than would have if you just listened to your superior's orders and let it go.
Dude, I loved during this part, dude. And I loved Luthen. I loved how he had like these little things, like these rules that he would do. And he said, kind of like a rule of thumb, build your exit on your way in. Dude, and he had set like charges on the outside. I'm like, dude, I just knew that he was going to be he was awesome. I was like, yeah, this guy's
just extra.
Yeah, no, it was funny. But yeah, originally Luthen gets called in because he's connected with Bix, which may or may not be, at this point, may or may not have been, romantically entangled with Andor, which is kind of safe to say that something went down with them. But yeah, he's trying to make some money. He's trying to get out of there because he knows that he's being tracked down for those killings. And he's trying to sell this sealed, was it Starpath unit?
Yeah.
And which is supposedly worth a lot of money. And instead of getting paid money, he gets a job.
Which is ultimately worth more than what he would have gotten.
Yeah.
Starpath unit.
But dangerous. There was a lot of work to be put into that. There was a lot of danger.
Yeah, we meet a couple people that will be, important later on in the show. Like you said, we met Bix Colleen and her horrible boyfriend, Tim. I hate that guy. Although I didn't want to see him die like a chump. I hated that guy. That was a terrible scene. Obviously Bix was mad at this guy for ratting out her childhood friend, Andor. But, maybe not childhood friend, but, her friend. Being locked up as the person that you are currently romantically involved with dies on the steps like a couple feet away from you and you can't reach them, that's just terrible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was crazy. I thought it was interesting how everybody kind of alerted, hey, there's some, pre-more people here, looking for somebody. And they start, kind of banging on, a bunch of scrap metal and stuff.
Yo, I love the culture in Morlana 1. Or no, it's not Morlana 1. That's the planet the moon that he attacked those guards.
Right.
But I love the culture in whatever
Aldani?
planet that is.
Aldani?
Aldani's the second planet. I forget what the first planet is. It's going to bother me. But anyway, I love that, like you said, Anthony, they start banging. Like, they have just random pieces of sheet metal and tools that you can bang on all over town whenever they want to alert the rest of the town that something's going down. They don't even know what's happening.
Ferrix.
Half of them, they have no... Ferrix, yes. Thank you, Anthony. That was going to really bother me. Yeah, so Ferrix has, like, a very look after your own type of mentality. They don't want outsiders getting involved in their business. I also love the guy who has the bell duty in the morning. He just kind of like stretches his arms and then he just starts hitting the bell.
Yeah.
It's the coolest bell tower I've ever seen. I feel like that would be such a satisfying thing to hit.
I know,
You guys-
and it's a crazy looking one too. It kind of looks like an anvil or something.
I'm not sure you guys picked up on it, but I don't know. There's a very little known actor. His name is Ethan Embry. He was in Can't Hardly Wait. It was like a teen
look him
movie in the late 90s, early 2000s. And he had like a spot role in the first 6 episodes where he was like an outside guard. I just love how that's the other thing that's kind of cool about these series. And I think we've talked about it before, or at least you guys definitely have, where Bill Burr was on Mandalorian, and just these little spot like actors that are getting like these little kind of like opportunities. And I just, it's another thing that I'm really enjoying about the Disney Star Wars content.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people are super willing to be a part of Star Wars, even though historically speaking, especially in the past couple decades, being a part of Star Wars is not always a good thing, and you get a lot of hate online. But yes, I think that's pretty cool.
Asha May, what?
Rose Tico, Little Annie.
Yeah, no, I actually felt bad for him and Ahmed Best.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think they deserve to get ragged on like that.
No, nobody deserves to get ragged on, for a role that they played in a movie. They're trying to entertain you.
Absolutely. Unless they antagonize people for it, kind of like you have I'm not gonna get too deep into it, but there's the whole Snow White thing that happened, and like the main actress was starting to antagonize people.
But I don't think the hate was equivalent, and that's the thing. I don't think like what she did warranted the outburst and outrage that ensued. Same with like,
well, she would she
Brie
antagonized people and was like, oh well, I don't need your business and that kind of stuff, like
that is true, yeah.
That's what I'm saying, like she kind of antagonized people, whereas these people just did their job and they got made fun of for it and they got attacked. And
I see what you're saying.
I wish that Jake Lloyd would have gotten kind of a second chance in the same way that Ahmed Best did. Like I think it's really cool that they worked him in to be like a really like awesome Jedi master. So, but yeah,
he did show back up. So what's different about Ahmed Best and Jar Jar is I think that he was already an adult by the time that he played that character, or like almost.
Yeah, absolutely.
The thing with Jake Lloyd is, you're not a fully functioning even teenager at that point. So, yeah, that's a sad story for another day.
Yes.
But yeah, let's jump forward to the second arc. Unless we have anything else to say about the first arc, Rich.
No.
First 3 episodes.
No, you guys got it covered pretty well.
Right. Yeah, that first arc really like sets the stage for the second arc, because this is where Cassian is brought over to these group of rebels that they have a plan, but their plan is not even it's not 100%, and he calls it out. He's like, y'all know how do you know how this is, what y'all are doing right now?
Yeah,
you know how to fly this?
Yeah. Their plan had a lot of holes in it.
Yeah.
Like a lot of holes. And they were only 5. They had been planning for like, what? They said 5 months, and they only had like 5 days left before, they actually had to do the thing that they needed to do. I did really like the cover that they chose for this particular event.
Yeah.
Like, happens every 3 years on the dot, has happened for time immemorial on this planet Aldani, where basically it's this huge celestial event where it's almost akin to 50 meteor showers happening all at once, you know? It's like the movie Your Name happening 50 times. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it was such a beautiful event, and I thought it was so cool, man. It's
one of the most magical Star Wars moments.
Yeah, right?
In Star Wars. Like, it's just like the awe and the spectacle, and like you can kind of, they played it so realistically because like they even like the Imperials, like this is something that, you know, when they're stationed on this place, oh, you got to see the Eye, you got to be there for the Eye. They talked about that. They were excited about that, and everyone acted like you would in the real world if this was an event that's happening. You have an eclipse that's happening outside. You have a solar eclipse. Everyone's going to have their glasses. Everyone's going to be prepared. Everyone's going to find a spot to, you know, witness a total solar eclipse.
Absolutely.
Because that is mind-blowing, you know? And this is, like, I would say more mind-blowing than even...
Yeah,
eclipse,
no, seriously. It's like mixing a meteor shower with an aurora borealis, like, mixed together. It just... The sky was all lit up and it was kind of different colors and it looked so cool. And I thought that sequence was really, really cool where, you know, they're kind of like everybody's getting into place. And then, yeah, man, like when they actually get to that vault and they like bust it open, like I knew that things were just going to get crazy.
Yeah.
Like somebody was gonna start snooping around and be like their comms are gonna be all the way down or something. I knew it was gonna be something.
The crazy thing about the stakes in Andor is that the only characters you know for certain that will make it out of this show alive that they've introduced are Cassian Andor and Mon Mothma. Those are the only two individuals in the entirety of the show that are safe, at least in this show.
Yeah.
Because we know Cassian exists past this point. We know Mon exists past this point, but everybody else is expendable. And the script uses that to its advantage. You don't know who's going to make it out alive. You don't know who's going to turn on you. You don't know. Like, even characters like Luthen, we have no idea if he ever gets to see, you know, the United Rebellion.
Right,
that, takes on the Empire in the original trilogy. We don't know that that's going to happen at this point. So it's a really cool concept. And I think, you know, we've kind of danced around like why this is so good. And I think part of it is just writing and directing. You know, like you have a very competent writer, you have a very competent directing group, or I should say writing group and directing group, because there's, you know, multiple writers, multiple directors for this series. And they use the same writer that they got for the rewrites of Rogue One. Something in Rogue One wasn't working, so they called in this guy, Tony Gilroy, who notably has mentioned in the past, and this is like, you know, in like the Rogue One era, that he wasn't a Star Wars fan when he was writing Rogue One. And I think that was a strength in his thing, because you kind of, for something like Andor to work, you need someone on the outside to look at things from a different vantage point. And this that's exactly what Andor is. It's a different vantage point in the galaxy. You have the rebellion. You know that these are good guys. Everything in the original trilogy says that these are the guys you're rooting for. These are the good guys who are, you know, bringing down the oppressive government. But to do so, to get to that point, you got to get dirty. Things have to get really bad and really nasty, and you're going to make mistakes, and you're going to have basically small acts of terrorism, which is what we ended up seeing on Aldani, you know, like, and they don't really understand what a rebellion is at this point. They only see it as small acts of, you know, organized violence or crime against the Empire that helps bring them down. So, and that's what we have in this arc, and it's so good.
And there's not even, you know, the group doesn't even fully trust each other either, you know?
Yeah.
That's another thing. It's that this is such an early budding version of the rebellion that we get in the original Star Wars trilogy. I mean, like you said, you know, you're getting gritty, and that might consist of some of the rebels killing each other, you know? And you get
guerrilla warfare, basically. Rich, I want to ask, like, how you feel about the rebellion at this stage. Like, how do you feel like they... What are your thoughts on it? Like, are they good guys at this point? Are they terrorists? Are they trying to do the right thing for the, or doing the wrong thing for the right reasons?
I think they're doing the right thing. I mean, I think back to the deleted scene from Revenge of the Sith, which would have taken place beforehand, right? And Bail Organa, and they're all trying to kind of rally the Senate, to do the right thing, essentially. So I don't think they're, I mean, I suppose in some way they are terrorists. I'm a little bit of a bleeding heart liberal over here, so I'm going to kind of side with the rebellion over here. Luthen,
no, I also side with the rebellion. Yeah. I'm not trying to say that.
You're the American conglomerate, and you're just opposing Vietnam. No, but like, I'm at the same time, like, I think that they're well put together. At the same, but again, this is my own poison. But like, Luthen seems like a guy who, if you just put an infinity stone towards his heart, like, he might completely betray everything he believes in. And
Interesting. Okay, so all right, so you have the rebels on Aldani. You're saying that, like, you definitely consider them the good guys, and for the intents of the story, they are the good guys.
Yeah,
that's not really a question, and we understand that what they're doing is for the greater good. The Empire is doing so much more harm than the rebellion ever could or ever wishes to. So what they're doing is necessary. But you're saying that Luthen doesn't seem like a totally good guy. And given the opportunity, he would stab some... Well, we know that he is like a backstabber in certain aspects, or, so...
Yeah, he seems like a kind of guy to me who is... I don't think that his impetus was to, in any way, shape, or form, like... I don't think he was inspired to join the rebellion because he wanted profit or safety. But there's a part of me that, I'm not sure if it's very Saul Guerrero-esque, but I just don't trust that Luthen is doing this 1,000% for the right reasons. I think that there is something that maybe motivates him past his desire for political justice. Like, I don't know, in the same way that I don't trust Chuck Schumer. I don't know. Like, there's something that inherently I'm like, I don't believe you. I don't know why, but I don't believe you. And I'm not sure if it's the wig or what it is about him.
It's a facade, and that's a great scene too, when he puts his wig on and like he like kind of like does a little dance and he smiles and he just gets into character right before he has to go back to work, quote unquote. It's a fascinating scene, and yeah, we don't really know if he's a good guy or not, or what his true motives are. We don't know his background. In the first season, I think there was a lot of people who really bought into the rumor that Luthen was, a Jedi or a former Jedi, and he's trying to take down the Empire because of what they did to the Order. But we don't know. We've got no confirmation about anything with that, or anything about that with Luthen. He doesn't seem to necessarily be, or he hasn't shown any force sensitivity or anything like that. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, honestly, you could say that literally about everybody in this show. Everybody. Cassian he's shown the ability to kind of like, backstab and just be like, I just want my money and I'm out of here. Literally everybody in that group, yes, they wanted to get back at the Empire, but literally for their own reasons. They all had their own reasons for doing what they did. It wasn't for a collective kind of rebellion. Like you said, there's different cells, but there's not really a united front rebellion, and it's showing that they each really have their own motive for doing what they're doing. They're kind of uniting for the sake of uniting, but there's you see that they don't trust each other. You have them getting angry that you got, Cassian is being promised to be, that he's getting paid. And so, yeah, a lot of them, and the other guy, man, I forgot his name. The other shady guy.
Skeen?
Yeah.
Skeen.
Okay, yeah.
With a name like Skeen, you got to be a little...
Yeah, so you have
shady.
Skeen, and he has his own motives, and like when after they escape the dam,
He kind of abandons the rebel cause for the sake of personal gain. He doesn't even he no longer even. I do believe that he had a brother, and his original plight against the Empire was real, but for all intents and purposes, the amount of money, like 40 million, that he was planning to take for himself, was enough for him to forget about everybody.
Right. And in that moment, I don't think that. So Cassian kills him, but I don't think it was because he was like, oh, he was going to take off and leave with the money. I think it was because he knew that if he were to leave with this guy, that this guy was going to try to kill him. And so I think it was out of self-preservation. So, I mean, when you really go back to it, you could point your finger to any one of these characters and say that they really have their own motive to do what they're doing. And it's not really for the greater good. I mean, sure, it may affect for a positive, stealing from the Empire is a positive, but in a way, they're kind of seeing it like they're getting what they feel is owed to them,
Yeah, no, 100%. I really loved this second arc. It's the one that I remember most when I think back to this first season of Andor, just because the spectacle that was the Eye of Aldani is just so burned into my memory. It's just such a great scene, and the whole heist was done so well and written so well. And again, Tony Gilroy and his writing team, I don't know if Tony Gilroy is a Star Wars fan now, but back in the Rogue One days, he had mentioned that he wasn't a fan. So coming into the universe without all that baggage that is inherent to fandom probably, gave him the edge with, writing these scripts. But as Rich was saying, being boxed in by the canon really, really worked in their favor. And I think that's the, of all of the Star Wars shows, or of all the Star Wars content, really, that we've gotten so far, this is the strongest case that I can find for the Lucasfilm Story Group, which is their collective canon moderators that, they know everything that there is to know. They have people who are good at timeline stuff, good at planet stuff, good at culture and, aesthetic and all that.
Right.
And having that team come into a project like this and say, this is available to you, this is available to you, keep going down this way, you're this is a perfect path to go down. Having that guide for someone who isn't a big Star Wars fan, and somehow marrying those two concepts into the show is so cool. And I'm such a fan. I can't wait to finally watch the second half of the season for the next episode.
I also believe that what really helps us out is that it's not a Star Wars TV show. It's a show that's set in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
And, it's...
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And it takes away a lot of that mysticism that the main storyline has, which, don't get me wrong, that's what we came to know and love about Star Wars, but the fact that we came in and we got something that was different and that it worked, and it didn't feel like they were trying to force it, but it felt natural. I think that, man, they killed it.
And this is not a show that someone like George Lucas or Dave Filoni could have ever come up with. In a million years, you give them 400 scripts, they're not going to come up with something like this, because they will always gear towards the more mystical and the more sci-fi aspects of it, or science fantasy aspects of it. And yeah, it's just a completely different type of Star Wars that we're not used to, and I think it's so refreshing to watch. But I think we should come to a close with our podcast. Any last thoughts? We'll start with you, Rich.
It's bothering me that I can't remember his name, but the character who I liked the most in the first 6 episodes. Yeah, exactly.
Brasso. Yeah, I forgot.
He's the guy who... It's crazy because, now that I've seen more of it, and this seems to be a running gag with me, that once I see more of a show, I enjoy a character's earlier performance more. But it really kind of bummed me out that we lost him. He seemed so interesting, and I almost wish we could have had a little bit more of him.
Oh, I think you mean Nemec.
Yeah, Nemec.
Okay.
Nemec is the guy that he was somebody who really, he's out there. He was different, and I kind of enjoyed him. And I wish that there was a little bit more of him. He just, I don't know if as I've mentioned many times, I'm very old. The Mission Impossible movie, at the beginning, I remember I really loved Emilio Estevez's character. He was basically like Nick Nemec. He's like the techie guy that everyone trusted, and he dies within like the first 9 minutes of the movie, and I was like, no! Yeah. And that's how I felt about Nemec here. I kind of, because he's the guy who I would be, right? Like, he's the character that I could see myself most as. And I'm like, oh no, he died.
I love that he's writing a manifesto and he's trying to, put into words what the rebellion means to him and what oppression means to him. I think he's a very powerful character, even though he's probably physically the weakest of those people. But his heart was 100% in it, probably more than anyone else there. Mm-hmm. At least that we know of. But anyway, yeah, Nemec's awesome. I really also liked Brasso. That was Cassian's friend, who basically he was the first one Cassian went to when he needed an alibi. He goes to Brasso, and Brasso, he rolls with it.
Yeah, immediately.
He's the ultimate bro.
Very die.
And yeah, I love Brasso. He's a great character, and we're gonna see him next week, guys. But Anthony, what about you? What last thoughts on Andor season 1, first 6 episodes?
It's awesome. Those first 6 episodes, they lead up to a really good build up, and I know that build up is going to continue on, and I'm excited about the latter half of the season. There's a lot of really cool things that happen, a lot of really cool characters, and yeah, man, I'm excited.
There's only one way out, guys, and that's by giving us a juicy 5-star review and catching us for our next episode, where we will actually, talk about the One Way Out storyline on Narkina 5. That's going to be really fun. I'm really excited about that because Andy Serkis in Star Wars, we had him as Snoke, but seeing him in his physical, regular, normal human body is a treat, and he's such a great actor.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely come back next week as we cover the next 6 episodes of Andor. But again, yeah, I was mentioning, you guys got to give us a 5-star juicy review, like a juicy. I was eating a chimichanga on Monday. It was a massive chimichanga from a Mexican restaurant. Chorizo, rice, beans.
Ooh.
Oh, it was so juicy. And I was thinking, just like that chimichanga, your review on whatever podcast app that you were listening to should reflect. And yeah, that's my personal thoughts. Guys, if you want to check out any of our socials, be sure to click down into the show notes down below, and you can find us there. But yeah, see you next time, guys.
Alrighty, peace.